Are you adhering to all the ethics and guidelines in your fundraising organization? Well, you might be doing something by accident. So today we're going to cover all the different areas that you need to make sure that you're taking care of so that you can raise money effectively, but also ethically. Number one is transparency and accountability. The bulk of this is how is the money spent? When you receive a gift, it's not enough to just say, oh, we spent the money in this area, but you should have some level of reporting and public access to how you are spending the dollars that the donors are transferring. Saying, oh, we spent it on operations is probably too broad. You want to be specific enough to, here's kind of our budget breakdown. Not saying you need to release every Excel spreadsheet for every single line item that you spend money on, but giving donors a really clear idea of how you're spending their money is just best practice. We don't have to be quite as closed off as a for-profit institution would be, but we don't have to be quite as open as opening every single line in our books, but something in the middle where if I give $100 to an organization, I have a pretty clear understanding of how that 100 was carved up. Maybe 5 to 10% of it was overhead. Another 5 to 10% goes into marketing and advertising. Maybe 5 or 10% on the program itself. However we split that up, I just want to make sure that I'm reporting that accurately and that I'm being honest about how I'm spending the money. Best way to avoid any pitfalls here are clear and accurate financials in your statements and making sure that your board, those who govern you and don't have a stake legally or from a monetary standpoint, but do have a stake in how your organization is run, have access to those financials, and there are regular, accurate reporting on those. Number two is donor intent. Now, there's actually no legal repercussions if a donor says, hey, I'm gonna give you this money, and I want this money to be spent on Project A. This is what they wish. They say, I'm gonna give you this money, the money goes to Project A. And you say, great, I'll spend it on Project A, but instead, you say, you know what, I really could use more money for Project B. Nothing will happen to you from a legal standpoint. This is dishonest, but it is not technically illegal. You can't get in trouble from the law from doing this. It's your money to do with what you say, but in terms of an ethical compliance standpoint, we want to make sure that we're adhering to the donor's wishes. And if we're going to move it to Project B, we have to first get permission. The donor may say, hey, you can use whatever you want. Choose Project A, B, C, I don't care, I trust you. But however the donor describes, whether written or verbal intent, we want to make sure that they're picking something that they approved of and they're not switching it. Now, if they go back, if they originally give for Project A and they say, actually, no, I changed my mind, it's Project B, it might be too late at that point. That's why it's good to have good documentation and a gift acceptance agreement of some kind, some sort of a policy. Again, not a legally binding document, but just a piece of paper that says, hey, I, the donor, want my money to go to this, this, and this, or be restricted for this, this, and this. And that way there's just a paper copy that you sign and they sign at the bottom and everybody agrees that's where the money should go. So it doesn't really matter what the intent is, but we want to make sure that we're adhering to it. Again, not illegal, but very, very careful that we're honoring donor intent. Number three is honesty in communication. And you may be thinking, duh, I should be honest with people. But again, there's no legal repercussions for being dishonest. As long as you're not misrepresenting something that it is breaking the law, you can say, oh, we help 10,000 kids per year. And you don't. You actually do help 1,000 kids per year. You should not say that you help 10,000 kids just to get additional funding, or if you lie on a grant statement. Again, there's some gray area here that we're kind of crossing between what's legally and what's ethically incorrect or correct, but you should just be honest across the board. Part of what you get in exchange for having no taxable income, it's like our tax exempt status as a 501c3, is that we're going to be highly transparent with all of our stuff. Is that we're going to go through and publish all of our financials, and we're going to be very transparent about governance. Our bylaws are public, everything's searchable in a free database, and you can't say one thing and do another. And again, this seems obvious. It's like, well, don't lie. It's like, yes, duh, but according to the code of ethics, this is something that's really important because people tend to exaggerate just a little bit. I'll give you an example. You may be thinking, I'm not going to say something as crazy as we help 10,000 people and we only help 1,000. But what if you had a piece of marketing or communication that says something like this? Every dollar saves a child's life. There's some gray area there because say you were to give us $1 to St. Jude. Surely that dollar might be applied to some program or some operation or something that might actually save a child's life. But the sentence itself kind of implies that dollar is kind of a one-to-one. You give $1, you save one child. It's not quite right. It's the reason you don't see St. Jude saying stuff like this. They'll rephrase it to be more clear. So it's not like you're lying, you're just kind of bending it in a way that makes it a little bit misleading. And again, this isn't dishonest, maybe it is dishonest, doesn't really matter. It doesn't fall into the category of that like ethical honesty that we're looking for. So again, you can't say something like this unless truly giving $1 does save $1 per child, which right now probably doesn't happen with any charity. So just be careful of stuff like this. Just give it through a lens of like when you're putting out a marketing statement or something in your case for support, look at it and go, is this truly true, or am I exaggerating for effect and urgency? May think it helps you in the long run to say, yes, let's try to get more donations with more urgency, but we don't want to be intentionally misleading. We want to be honest in our communication. Number 4 is donor privacy. Again, you're thinking, obviously, I'm gonna be very private about my donors. This is an easy one. I would never mess this up. However, it is commonplace nowadays to buy and sell information, to buy and sell data, to share lists. This is very, very common practice. You sign up for a service or buy something on a website, likelihood is they're going to take your information and they're going to give it to a data broker and they're going to sell you ads in some way. This is just how the world works now, and hopefully as a nonprofit, as a charity, we don't want to add to this problem. Another example of where you might breach this without meaning to. Say you're the development director at the Humane Society and you have all of these donors that you know personally, and then you get another job at the YMCA downtown. And you go to those same donors and you say, well, I know they were giving this at the Humane Society, and now I'm working at this nonprofit, and I'm gonna bring all those same donors because I already know how much they're going to give. Again, some people would say that's totally okay. According to the Code of Ethics, that's actually not practice that we would recommend or something that you're legally or technically, ethically allowed to do. So we want to be very careful that when a donor gives to an organization and they want the privacy of their gift amount, their address, all of that, that we keep that confidential just like we would if it was a legally binding thing. Again, there's not going to be probably any legal consequence. Depends on the state you're in, depends on kind of the gray area that we're in there. But for the most part, we want to be very, very careful about donor privacy. If this information that they've shared with us, we have to keep it under lock and key. We can't share it with anyone that they say that we can't share it with. They want to be anonymous. We need to make sure that it stays anonymous. Number 5 is recognition and stewardship. If a donor were to give $100,000 to your organization, we want to make sure that we're recognizing them for the correct amount. They say, well, they pledged $100,000, but they only transferred this much. Or worse, they pledged $100,000 and we're going to name this thing after them even though they haven't transferred any of it yet. Or even worse, they've put $100,000 in their estate for us, and upon their death or upon their passing, we will get to see the $100,000, so we're going to recognize them for that. We have to make sure that in all cases, we're being transparent and accurate. Is it a pledge? Is it a bequest or a gift upon my passing? Is it cash? However we're reporting it publicly should be accurate to what it is. Sometimes people will exaggerate. I think one of the culprits of this, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, but universities will many times count planned gifts, bequests, towards their campaign. They're like, oh, we're gonna raise $500 million for the University of whatever. I don't wanna call it any specific institution, but say it's a $500 million campaign. That's like a pretty typical size for a big university. And as they go around and get these gifts, they're getting a bunch of gifts from donors who say, yes, I'll put you in my will for X, Y, Z amount. We don't tend to see those amounts as accurately as we do pledges in cash. So half that money is not going to get transferred for decades. And who knows by that time if it's even going to be accurate in the first place. So again, it feels commonplace and it shouldn't exist the way it is, but the way that we recognize and publicize gifts has to be accurate to what's actually happening. We need to talk about either the cash that's transferred and say as much, or we need to say we've collected X amount in pledges. If we're including bequests or planned gifts in our campaign totals, which you shouldn't ever do anyways, you can have a separate bucket for that. We just have to make sure that we're declaring it. And again, people aren't the best with this, so recognition and stewardship must remain accurate to what you're actually getting transfer-wise. Number 6 is professional conduct. This has a lot to do with like fairness and integrity and having boundaries with your donor that are appropriate, that you're not mixing, personal with donations. But I think one of the biggest misfires that people tend to have is if you were to get a percentage or a commission on gifts. Very, very important that if we're gonna use this example again, if a donor is to give $100,000 to your organization, that you do not get a piece of that $100,000. You don't get, $5,000. You don't get a 5% commission to you. Now, the charity can pay you, say we're over here paying the charity can pay you this way, but we can't pay you this way. We can't pay commission on something that is an outright gift, and you definitely can't do it as a percentage. There are registered fundraisers where you can do that. Those are illegal in many states. It's actually illegal in almost all states. There's a list of states that you can do that. But according to the Board of Ethics, it should be ethical in 0 states. We're very, very careful here not to have a percentage transferred over of the actual amount. Again, the charity can pay a flat fee. They can even pay bonuses. It's appropriate to do that. But we can't do a percentage of the giving because from a reporting standpoint, all of the money should be transferred to the organization and then the organization distributes it from there. So we'd be very, very careful about how we put that in writing and how we talk about it. And number 7, finally, trust and sustainability. By adhering to these practices correctly, we tend to sometimes lose the battle and win the war, to use that term. So instead of picking the easy path or the quick path to money or the quick path to the fix that we need right now, we're making decisions that work well for the organization and the community in the long run. Here's an example. Say we're in a $7 million campaign. We want to raise $7 million and we're going to spend that on a new building. We're going to build this new center. It's going to cost $7 million. Here it is. Say about halfway through the campaign, the CEO realizes, oh no, we're going to be $1 million short in our budget this year. There were budget cuts and we don't want to do that. So it's like we've raised the $7 million. Instead of spending it on the building, we're just going to carve out $1 million of it and we're going to put it into operations. But we know that people would be upset about this. So we're just not going to tell anyone that this happened. We're going to say, oh yes, every dollar, all of the $7 million was spent on the new building. This is exactly what happened. In truth, only $6 million was spent on the new building and $1 million was transferred to cover the operating deficit. Now, if this is what has to happen, that's still totally fine. You just have to tell people. We just have to be open and honest about this. It may be a bad look in the short term to be like, oh, they ended up spending some of the money. We have to go back to some of those donors and explain like, hey, I know you transferred that for the building. Would you mind helping us split that between operations and the building for this 1 year? And we can do that. And that's going to be painful. It's going to be difficult to do. But way worse is if they find out afterwards that they gave a big gift to this organization and the organization spent it on something, even if it's adjacent, we're still helping the same people, but they spent it on something they didn't say they were going to spend it on. That breach of trust kind of destroys that donor relationship forever. From that point on, the donor goes, you know what, there's a lot of good charities in town. I'm just not going to give to this organization anymore because they're just going to give the money away. And I don't want them to spend it on the way that they say they're not going to spend it. They're not an honest and trustworthy institution. So from a sustainability standpoint, again, better to take the hit now, but for the longevity, to do it correctly so you can maintain that donor trust. All right, so hopefully either accidentally or on purpose, you are not in breach of any of these ethical codes and guidelines. If you want a detailed view of the actual code of ethics and the things that we need to adhere to, we'll link that in the description below. And as always, if you want additional help, you can head over to pridephilanthropy.com and click on that Let's Chat button to get connected with one of our experts. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.